how hard did you push it till I black out? Yes. Numerous times, yes.
What's happening, Municipals? This is your boy, Missy, and Special Guest Ashton. We don't get to do core review episodes very often anymore, but we decided to get on. We had a chance to play a really cool. We'll talk about it. We'll get into it. And we'll see what our takes are. But we got together to play some golf. Well, Ashton was on his way down to do a farewell tour about Greg down in Bandon. So yeah, we got to meet up in Eugene, get some golf in, but I'm really excited to just hit up boy and talk some golf. So what's going on, buddy?
Well, I believe your text earlier said cocktail or something, so I got a totally unsponsored high noon. I guess that's no laying up. So that's to you, Big C. Little pineapple. I'm good, man. Yeah. Things have been good. I feel like spring has finally kind of come to the Bay Area. Of course, as I say that, it's gonna rain this weekend, but I feel like spring has kind of really come to the Bay. It definitely was great to see you. I mean, just thinking about just been playing a decent amount of golf as much as I can, and yeah, kind of all kind of culminating in this Bandit trip. It's kind of a big shout out to Drive Box. I've been kind of great. I've seen our boy Juan at Lincoln, the best municipal golf course in the planet, on the planet. But I've been hanging out at Drive Box over at Lincoln Park and getting geared up and kind of getting my numbers dialed in. It's always kind of fun to see Juan over there, playing as much as I can and really just trying to, kind of peak for this Bandon trip as much as I can, because I knew that, we'll do a whole pod on this, but, I knew JD was going to, I'll say encourage, but, really the only option was to play Bandon all the way back and going with some guys who were objectively better than me from a handicap perspective. But it was definitely great to kind of start off with just kind of a friendly, what was it, a little 5-5-5, a little friendly round in Eugene. And also, too, kind of sentimental a little bit, because I only processed when we got there, but when we drove you, when we took you, I helped you, I didn't really help you move, but when I drove with you from the Bay Area to Portland, after we played Bandon, we actually stopped at Emerald Valley just because you wanted to see it. And so to kind of get to play there with you, and with JD and Greg, and also too, just, I'm engaged to an Oregon Duck, and to kind of get to see the Oregon Ducks kind of home track. It was really cool. And we'll talk more about the golf course, but, it was just really good to kind of get to, when he booked this trip, I did not think I was going to get to see you. And it was certainly great to get to see you, and also very much appreciate the pickup from the airport as well.
Yeah, a little swoop on the course before we had to get there from the airport. If you're ever flying into Oregon, it was super easy. So if you guys ever trip to Oregon and flight's not expensive, I would definitely check that out. But yeah, I have kind of a love for all of golf courses. So when we were in our first, little Bandon trip that me and you got to, I wanted to stop there just to see it. We didn't have enough time to play it. We had to get back up to Portland because I had a moving truck coming in and a whole bunch of stuff. So we had to beat the moving truck on our way up there. But, I just really love college courses. I don't know what it is about it, but I just think it's kind of a cool thing for a college affiliated golf course. My home course is a college course, Tristan Tree in Fort Vallis. So, and they do a really cool thing with their agronomy program that actually maintains a golf course, which is really cool. I'm not too sure about Emerald Valley's connection with U of O, then team plays in Texas there. But yeah, so Emerald Valley was an interesting track, to say the least. I would say there were good holes, bad holes. It is your quintessential Pacific Northwest course. Tight corridors, very old evergreen forest, trees. Not a lot of places to miss. Fertile greens, lots of bunkers in front of the greens to cause a little bit more issues. So, and the pin placements that they had for us when we went out there and played that day. I mean, you want to talk Sunday pin placements? No, this was like the revenge of the groundskeepers, because they had every single pin tucked back left, and every single green at Emerald Valley slopes back to front, and with multiple tiers. And so there was nowhere to link past and bring it back, and there was nowhere to land in front because you're spinning everything off the greens. So it was an interesting test of golf going into a round that was my second round of the entire year. So
Yeah. No, you're right. I think it's interesting. I mean, you weren't directly comparing them, but it's interesting to think about Emerald Valley in connection to, or comparing it or contrasting it with Tristan Tree, which is, as Chris said, is Oregon State's track. Because ironically, and Chris, you can fact check me on this. Tristan Tree was actually, both courses were last touched by Dan Hickson. We looked. Emerald Valley was 2002, and Dan Hickson also did that. But what's really interesting to me, and this isn't a good thing or a bad thing, I think the reasons why for us is, like low single digit handicaps, the reason we kind of really like Tristan Tree is the same reason why I think we maybe don't love Emerald Valley. And what I mean by that is Tristan Tree is very open, and I was very impressed by look, I mean, it's not an easy golf course, but it's a place where you're not going to lose a lot of golf balls. There are very few trees on the course, but where they are, they're very clearly there for a reason. And the most charitable thing I can say is I enjoyed Emerald Valley, but you could probably remove more than half the trees on property and be a better golf course. But what's interesting, and this is not meant for this podcast, but if I was the number 2 player at the University of Oregon and I was like, okay, I'm going to go play, by myself 18 holes to really get myself dialed up for the Pac-12 championships, Emerald Valley is again, this is very different from how I grew up, but from how talking to you or talking to our friend Tudor, who I went to Bandon with, Emerald Valley is very much like a capital C, like championship Pacific Northwest course. And again, I'm actually going to drive by shoot you, JD, and I know what you're going to say, but it was wet, balls are spinning backwards. We played the gold tees, or Chris didn't, but me, Greg, and JD did. It was 7,200 yards. It was just a course where I just didn't have a lot of fun. And I think that I'd be the first person to admit playing a 7,200 yard golf course when it's wet like that was just it was a mistake for me. I didn't even look at the card before we played. So I just didn't have much fun. It's not an indictment on the golf course, but I'm more just saying as a larger discussion, it's fascinating to think about Oregon State, Tristan Tree, Dan Hickson, open, very strategic trees, and you have Emerald Valley, Dan Hickson, some tee shots like number 14, I think it was, where it's why is that tree right there? It's literally this is not that hard of a tee shot, but it's now a very hard tee shot because that tree, when that tree was planted, it was probably perfectly fine. Now it's blocking the area I'm trying to hit into by 40%. So it's really interesting, for, you got Oregon and Oregon State, these rivals, but to think they have a golf course, both touched by the same architect, but literally could not be more different stylistically. And again, if I was trying to get ready for the Pac-12 championships, I probably want to play at Emerald Valley. But if I want to go play a casual round with you, I would pick Tristan Tree 9 times out of 10, even from the right tee. So I did not dislike Emerald Valley. It it's just to quote our friend DJ Pyhowski, just a very like tight piece of property. Like there's just
Very
not a lot of
claustrophobic.
space. Very claustrophobic.
And it's you talking about the comparison, Dan Hickson touching both courses. The golf architect that designed it is Bob E. Baldick. He was the OG designer of it. And Bob actually has touched a lot of golf courses that me and you actually love and also hate. One of our favorites, and we've talked about it in absolute freaking lengths on this course or this podcast, is Soul Park. He was one of the original co-designers of the golf course before it was touched by one of the golden architects of our day. Now, so in other courses that we also love, Alta Sierra up in Auburn, California. It used to be a country club, now it's public. That place is one of my favorites. Plumas Lake in Oliver, and YOLO Flyers Club in Woodland, which is home to our boy Keenan, and so many more. I mean, I could name a list of them, and then there's courses like Foxtail. So that's just about 30 minutes from you in the North Bay. And me and you both will admit Foxtail is not one of our favorite courses to play. It's an okay track, but it's not anything kind of scream home about. But then he also designed Los Robles Greens. It's one of my big surprises and favorite courses that we did on our first golf trip that we ever took together. It was one that I slid in there, so we had some time to play before we played Rustic, and I think every single one of us were happily surprised at how great that golf course was. It has been renovated and touched since Bob has been out there, and it seems like some of his courses that we love have been retouched up by some of the architects that we also really love. So, I think Bob is a very polarizing architect in his own right, and he's probably built courses on very low budgets and also built courses with an immense budget, and that probably changes kind of design when you're tied by how much money and the land that you're utilizing. But Emerald Valley is one where I don't necessarily think that it was one of his best pieces of work, and I think there's a lot of things that I think could have made that course better. Like you were saying, trim the trees back a little bit. Maybe create some slopes that actually play instead of it just being turtleback dropping off all faces. There were just some things that I thought were quirky and not super well designed. But overall, it is probably one of the hardest tests of Pacific Northwest golf I've played.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm not going to lie. This is one of those, I would not have made the comparison without us going through the course list before we press record. But now that we kind of talk about it, it feels very similar to Foxtail North, because Foxtail North, I remember, also shout out to Hussey. I remember we played a NorCal Golf Guys event up there. I think Hussey shot 75 and played great. I remember Brandon played great too. Those guys both balled out that day. But yeah, I just remember that course being okay, it is a 400-yard dog leg, and if you drive it like Rory, shout out Michael Block. If you hit it 140 feet in the air, you could take the corners, but I think at the time I was also having some definitely have some driver issues, and the hard part was it was either play the hole like a tour pro and hit it 140 feet in the air and carry it and hit flip wedge in, which I think Hussey did a few times, but what it was really asking you to do was essentially hit a hybrid to the dog leg and then a 6-iron in. It's a very, very antiquated idea. And again, same idea. It's dog legs with very thick trees requiring you to do that dog leg. And there's a reason why I haven't gone back to Foxtail North. I will say that like I think one thing we should highlight as we kind of get a little bit into the course was I thought the conditioning was pretty great. I mean, especially hearing I know you guys haven't had the wettest year. Um, yeah, there was definitely some fairways and stuff that were a little bit wet, but I thought the fairways were pretty good. And then I thought also at the same time the greens had been punched like 2 weeks before, but the greens were a little bit slow, but were pretty good. But to your point, I'm not a golf architect, but I do not understand why you would have 18 greens that are essentially all back to front. Um, I just didn't think it was the most interesting from a greens perspective. I didn't think it was the most interesting. Like from like, do they all need to be back to front? Like, I don't know. It's just like we could all just. I think even the starter told us that, or the guy in the pro shop. And so I don't know. I think especially funny thing is like I'm almost glad I played it in that direction. Is going to Bandon and seeing like all these greens and all these shapes and all these slopes, just kind of crazy. Like this, like I see what you're trying to do here, but I just don't know why. Like it could have been redeemed a lot by having really interesting green complexes, but when it's like off the tee, it's like you need to do this thing based off of the trees, and then oh, you also need to do this thing because of the green. It turned into a golf course where like we'll talk about our favorite holes and least favorite holes, but candidly, I think my other big problem was it all kind of blended together. Which again, sometimes for me can be okay because it's like, as I've talked about before, I didn't grow up playing Pacific Northwest golf. It's kind of new to me. But if I was you who's seen a lot of these courses, there's really nothing about Emerald Valley that would be like, wow. Like I've seen a lot of Pacific Northwest courses, and that has a distinct feature. When you've told me about some of the places you've played, like Tokati or something, that's Pacific Northwest, but like it has like defining characteristics. I'm not as intelligent or haven't seen as much as you about Pacific Northwest, but I just don't see anything about Emerald Valley that's going to scream like that is a distinctive feature about the place, except for that the lab headquarters are literally like right next to the clubhouse. That's kind of a cool thing with the moment lab is having, but the actual golf course, it doesn't feel like it has any distinctive features, which to me, I think that's a negative because if you're an architect, you want to kind of have like a at least a backbone that kind of runs through that people can identify as that's what makes this course this course. And I would just say Pacific Northwest, a lot of trees, hit it straight, keep it under the hole, but you're probably going to because the ball's going to come down the hill anyway. And good luck, right? And if you're playing the back tees, you need to hit it 290 in the air. And that's the story, right? Like enjoyable, but nothing distinctive.
My big take there is, with courses that are built in the 50s, 60s, 70s, the ball didn't spin as much as it does now. Like people weren't hitting as high, getting as much spin, things like that. So to protect greens and to make you not, to be able to make the ball stick, there were a lot of greens that were built in that time frame and that style of architecture that were sloped back to front. That was a way of being able to attack pins and getting balls stopped. Now that we have such active golf balls and we have, spin and technology that allows us to be able to hit a 4-iron high and get enough spin to stop on a green, where a 4-iron, 3-iron back in the day were just these low bullet, low stars that you would roll up to. That's what these greens were designed for. They're not designed for modern golf. And that if Emerald Valley wants to stay relevant, I think the bones are there in the layout of the holes. I think there needs to be some foliage that gets pushed back. I think for me, it's as a guy that's played a lot of Pacific Northwest golf, some land and some courses that I really particularly are fond of, there are corridors that you have to hit through off the tee. But what it ends up opening into is a valley of sorts, where they're opening at the end of the corridor, or you're hitting into a corridor, but you're in an opening, so you feel like you're tight and claustrophobic, where the trees start lining at the tee box, continuing through the hole. I think there's ways to kind of go in and out of those type of kind of areas, and I think that's what makes a really solid Pacific Northwest golf course. I love Tokatee. I am a big fan of the reserve. Big fan of, I think Eastmoreland has the bones there. It just needs to also be opened up a little bit. But there are courses out there that I think bring that element in, but also allows the golfer to be able to recover from a mistake. Where I think Emerald Valley, it's one of those places where you get into a bad spot. It's a straight chip left into the fairway and continue playing. There is no forward figuring out different shots. It's you're in jail. You need to get out. Then you can continue on.
Yeah. No, I mean, like I'm not comparing these. I'm actually I'm kind of doing the opposite. But the reason why outside of Pasatiempo, Bandon Trails is my favorite course is because, like I've talked about, as a kid from the South, Bandon Trails kind of like it sort of has that Pacific Northwest feel. But the magic of it is, I know you haven't played it yet, but like if I think about like number 8 at Bandon Trails, it's like a drivable par 4. And it just seems super tight. But like the thing is, like there's way more room right than you actually think. Like I actually I hit this like gross hook on that hole that somehow stayed in play. Or the better example is number 9. It's this like par 5, which like it's cool because to your point, like because of the way the trees are up by the green, like the trees are very much, there's not a ton of room, but you're 565 yards away from that. The fairway is actually super wide, but when you turn the corner on that tee box and you look kind of at the green, you're like, I need a good drive here. And like you do, but like it's a very big fairway, and it just kind of gently, where you're hitting your driver into is very wide. And then as you make your way to the green, it starts to narrow, but it's a 560 yard par 5. But off the tee, you have this anxiety of it feeling tight, when in actuality, it's not tight at all. But I've definitely seen it a couple times we've played. If people think too much about it being tight, I've watched people hit tee shots out of play there, but that's like entirely on the player. That is the architects making you feel like it's tight when it's not, and then that's bringing like tension and stress and having you hit a bad tee shot. Where like a lot of what you get at Emerald Valley is like, no, like here's a 25-yard corridor. Like we're not deceiving you. It's not like I wonder if this is tight. You need to hit it in this 25-yard corridor. Period. End of story. And it just, again, I think it could just do with if half the trees there got removed. I think it could do it. It could just be helped a lot. But then again, I mean, I've heard from you and other people that this is a lot of courses in the Pacific Northwest, and like I said, it holds a lot of qualifiers, it holds a lot of events. Like it's a championship course. I just think that like for a Sunday player, it could just be a lot more fun if they took out some of these trees and opened up these corridors a little bit.
Yeah, my thought on kind of what you're trying to describe is I consider it as a cathedral of trees. So, I want it to frame the hole, but I don't necessarily want them to be encroaching on the architectural side of how the hole plays. And so what I mean by that is like, yeah, you can have it frame shots and like, no, man, if you're trying to whip a draw around here, it's not going to happen. Like, you need it straight through here, but then once you get through there, you're going to have plenty of options and different ways to play the hole from there. But no, like, this is framing how we want you to play the hole, but then after that, you're going to have multitudes of options on how you want to approach the green. And, I don't know if you remember this hole. You try to forget about Rose City, but there's a par 3 on the backside that basically has a cathedral of trees behind the frame it to where you're at an elevated tee boxing down into this basin of green. There's a actual like slope basin at the base of the hole, and it plays about 165, 170 ish. But the trees make you feel like you have nowhere to miss. It's like hitting the island green at Sawgrass, but it legitimately only wraps around 30% of the backside green. But the way it's framed within the trees, you feel like if you miss left, you're absolutely going to be bummed. It's not. It's just a well-designed place to put a green on a par 3. And I think just framing it with trees and not utilizing them as penalties and creating good architecture utilizing trees that are in place there is the way to go. So it's and that's the thing. I think when courses were built in the 50s and 60s and they're public accessible courses, and it costs a lot of money to remove and maintain these trees, it's a tough thing. Us as players, we would love to see that. There are things that me and you have played hundreds upon hundreds of golf courses. We've seen good, bad, and ugly. And I think there are things that we see that can create a much more enjoyable playing experience, but it's all up to the cost of the public golf course. And, you know, I definitely think if you're going to bring somebody like Dan Hickson in 02 to do a redesign, and all he does is expand upon what he had, I think you misutilized some of the talents of Dan.
Yeah, and just to make sure we get it right, so shout out to Wikipedia for this. Let's see. So it says the original course was laid out in 1966 by Bob E. Baldick. In 2002, parts of the course were redesigned by Dan Hickson. So parts of the course. A Portland golf course designer who had played at Emerald Valley when he was at college. The redesign added elevated tee boxes for the second and third holes, providing a view of the Willamette River from the third tee. The redesign project also enlarged the pond in front of the second green, added new bunkers near the third and eighth greens, and expanded the ninth. So I guess if you think about it, he kind of touched part of it. And also, in fairness to him, that was 2002. I mean, 22 years of tree growth. Just bring it back out, right? Like, seriously, like just get Dan Hickson back out here. Yeah, it's been 20 years, Dan. Come back out and give this place some love.
Well, and Dan has grown as an architect as well. 02, he was an infant in the architectural space. He was doing little projects like that. Now he has built multitude of full-fledged championship top 100 courses. So I mean, it's time to get Dan back out there and be able to put his fingers deep into Emerald, because let's just bring this out into the world. Who gives money? Like, how can Oregon State, your rival, only about 40 minutes away, have a better golf course than you, and your alumni is the owner of Nike? And everything on campus, their stadium, like everything at U of O is state art, and the course that your golf team plays at needs,
you could just use a little bit of love.
The most help. Just needs love. Like, where's the Nike infusion of cash to make this the premier level golf facility within Division I golf? Like, how is Oregon dropping off not having the most state-of-the-art situation for every single, they have it for every other sport? Or track and field program might have the most state-of-the-art, track. That's where they hold the world every year. Like, people come across the entire world to be able to play or to use that facility.
Hey, to bring a little football into this, Dan Lanning said no to Alabama to stay at Oregon because he feels, I'm sure Phil Knight wrote him a big under-the-table check to do it, but, But looking at Wikipedia, this kind of sounds like ChatGPT wrote it, but they nailed it. It says, it is known for its tree-lined fairways, well-groomed greens, like well-groomed greens is not a real statement, and excellent course conditions. Emerald Valley was built on a flat tract of land along the river, so the course gets its character from meandering doglegs. If ever Mark Wahlberg comes and takes our podcast name, meandering doglegs would be a good one. And tree-lined fairways, well-placed sand traps help narrow the approaches to greens. The greens are nicely contoured with some tricky slopes. Again, that sounds a little bit fake, but that does kind of nail it. I am curious, Chris, though. I'm not from the Pacific Northwest. Do you feel like I agree with what you're saying about, state of the art and everything you just said, but do you think that your opinion is a bit unique? Because, for example, like, I don't think he listens to the pod, but, our buddy Tudor, who I just went to Bandon with, like, he loves Emerald Valley. And he very much loves, like, tree-lined Pacific Northwest. Like, that's the kind of golf he enjoys. Do you think that, like, maybe not the average golfer, but, like, do you think your opinion on tree removal and stuff, I mean, I know we talked to Garrett last year about it from Fried Egg. Do you feel like your opinion, like, do you think many people might respond to you and say, it doesn't need anything? Or, like, I mean, I'm so curious, like, what, like, for Pacific Northwesters, like, people who live within a couple hours, do you think that, like, they would agree with you, or do you think they would probably push back? If you had to guess, I know you're totally guessing, but what would you guess?
I think it's going to be an absolute mixed bag. I think I grew up in the Bay Area, so I grew up playing very different golf than what I have been living within, in and out of for the last decade. So, it's one of those things where I think there are people out there. I've had conversations with people like Akbar and Matty Brown and the Fried Egg guys, and things like that, where they definitely, certain courses definitely can be improved by some tree removal and some full pushback. And it's like that across the country. I mean, even if you're not from the Pacific Northwest, every place overgrows. Like, you gotta allow the course to maintain its perimeters, and the within those perimeters, it will allow you to be able to maintain the originality of the actual architecture of the course. And so, if not doing that, and that's probably a detriment to public golf courses out here, is the cities and the owners of these public courses don't necessarily invest the funds to maintain it and keep it that way. Where I think there are guys like Tudor who spent his entire life in this region, and has probably played 90% of his golf within this region. And it just feels like home. That's just what he's used to. That's what he's had available to him. I think if Tudor broadened his scope of what golf is like outside of what we have here in the Pacific Northwest, he might have a little bit different, thoughts and processes of how things might or should look. But, I think it's what you're used to and what you've played. And, like, that's why you think the Bay Area is so good for golf, because you were in a place like Atlanta where you didn't have a lot of golf. You were very limited. You had to drive a long way. You had to really go out of your way to find golf, where you had your really, mediocre municipal around you, or you had a member of a very expensive country club. Your only two options, in the Bay Area. And yes, you can find very expensive, exclusive country clubs, but there's also a plethora of public golf tracks that are well maintained, well designed courses that necessarily you don't need to join a private course to have, something at your fingertips to be able to play. So yeah, I really think it depends on the person and kind of if you have a broader scope. I think like our guys, the Friday and Akbar and Matty Brown, they've played like myself everywhere, and they've experienced all different terrains and styles of architecture. You bring that back home, and you're like, yeah, this is Pacific Northwest golf, but it's also true, well-designed Pacific Northwest golf. Like you've talked about with Tokatee, Pronghorn, Bar Run. I could, you played Trophy Lake up near Seattle. Those style of places, that is Pacific Northwest golf done correctly. Where I think Emerald Valley's just it's reached a point where the last time it was touched in two. It's been 22 years. Time to rank it. We need to get a refresh on that course.
Yeah, it's also funny because I don't know how to like link this or whatever, but I would encourage people to go and look at the on the Wikipedia page. There's the 19. I mean, it was built in '66, but there's a picture in 1970, and you can just tell from this picture the trees are tiny. Um, and so yeah, like I would be fascinated to know what our guy Baldick, if he came and saw it now, like what would you? But who knows? Maybe his vision is like, oh, I wanted these grand majestic trees, and this is the final form. But no, that's a. This is gonna sound pandering. That's a good answer because I think that to your point, people who like know and love and like they ride for like Pacific Northwest golf, also probably people who like hit it very straight. Probably this is their kind of golf course. But I think to your point, kind of, I guess the best way to put it is it's not in line with sort of the what we're trying to do from like a modern perspective, right? Less trees, tree removal, open spaces, and also too, I think it's important for any people who are just finding us now. Go back to the beginning of last year and find our podcast with Garrett because Garrett from the Fried Egg. Because one thing for me, one of the questions I was glad I got to ask him was around like if he was making a case to the Portland City Council, like what would he say about like because tree removal is a complicated topic. And he was saying, and I'd never thought about it this way, that trees are actually, especially trees that are planted or trees that are non-native or trees that, are really just the easiest way to put it is are not supposed to be there. That they are basically taking nutrients, soil, water, they're taking from the area, right? Or he was saying also too, like the grass underneath or the ground, the trees, while we see them and they're beautiful, they're actually like detrimental to the larger ecological area around it. And again, if we're hammering kind of the same point, but yeah, I think just taking out some trees would do a lot to open this place up. But again, I think that I'd encourage, especially for someone like me who's not from the area, I'd highly like. I think we'd both agree you should go play this place. It's cool. It's definitely cool. But I'd encourage you, especially when it's wet, play it up, um, play a tee up, and just yeah, like hit it in the fairway because it's just to your point. If you're playing it farther back than you should and you're kind of wild off the tee, you're going to shoot a really high number. You're going to be pitching out sideways. You're going to find yourself in proverbial jail a lot. And yeah, I think we can also talk a little about a couple holes that we liked. One of the holes we played is probably one of the worst golf holes I've played that I can remember. And the trees certainly don't help that. But to be clear, like you should go play at this place. Like pace of play was good. I think it was what $80 to play, which is like pretty on par with what you would expect. You gave a glowing review of the hot dog. They had kind of energy balls. Like everything about this place is yes. It's just kind of know what you're getting into. Like do not be me and just say yes. I'll play it from the back and get on the sixth hole and go. This wasn't the right decision, was it? Just kind of know what you're getting for when you get there. But Chris, what was your favorite hole at Emerald Valley?
Oh, my favorite hole was number 6. I mean, anybody that listens to this pod knows that I love a par 4 that gives you a few options. So playing from the back tees, kind of where Ashton and JD and Greg played. I mean, you're playing at 53, which is a pretty substantial par four. Like that's a substantial number in distance. Then kind of where I played, which is probably further than I normally play, 1600. That's usually where Ashton plays when we play matches, and then I usually from 66, 67. So that's usually where we like to feel comfortable playing. Again, guys, play the tee boxes that you're comfortable playing and that you enjoy. But on 6, 437 from the tees I played that day. 407 would be the tee box that I would normally play. And what I love about that is it gives you multiple different ways to attack it. There's water on the right hand side. From 437, you have, a good 264 to carry the corner water. It's a dogleg right with 2 oblong shaped bunkers that protect the green. It's kind of a cone shaped green. So it basically slopes like every other green at Emerald Valley back to front with multiple tiers with a very small circular tier at the top of it. And that's kind of where our pin placement was that day. But, if you're a little bit bigger of a hitter off the blue, you could easily probably carry the water and have a nice little, 130, 140 in. You could also play it short and grab yourself a hybrid and be able to hit a nice soft hybrid into a back to front green. The great thing is having back to front greens is going to attack the green from a longer distance because the slope back to front is allowing it to be able to stop even from a lower trajectory. So, there's just, I like ways to kind of approach a hole and being able to, you play it one way, I play it the other way, and we kind of can end up with the same score. And I love that.
Yeah, I agree. I love number 12. Number 12 is a par 4, dogleg left, because of course it doglegs. 424 from the tees we played, 388 from the tees Chris played. And this one's like not a very cerebral or golf architecture answer. It's just simply that this one has the most unobstructed view of the Willamette River. And to be clear, not that I have played there. I'm only guessing, but it kind of reminds me of Waverly Country Club number those last couple holes at Waverly where the green is down by 16 green is down by the Willamette, and then 17, 18 kind of are the Willamette's over on the right. It reminds me similar. So you hit your tee shot and kind of there's the Willamette all along the left, gentle dog leg left. And again, like we're talking about, the bunker is in play. It's just one of those where you get up there, and I remember looking at JD and Greg and I said, so like, where exactly do I aim this? Like, it's not super comfortable. But especially with the rains that Portland, that the Pacific Northwest has been getting, the river was full, and it was kind of cool just to be on the tee box and to like hear the river kind of rushing by. However, we'll kind of get into negatives. You could actually say the next hole, number 13, was even more of this because from the tees we played, it was 610 yards, and you actually take the cart down, like basically you like drive across and then you have to walk back like 60 yards. And it was cool because like that tee box is essentially like you were basically standing like 2 steps away from the river. But the picture online doesn't really do it justice, but I think JD said it best. He said, and this is kind of I felt this way, but he kind of brought words to it. Yes, at 610, it's incredibly long, but the way the hole is designed, combined with the way the trees are, it's just a hole that's like, it's like, this is a 3-shot. Like, I don't care if like Tony Finau is out there. It's a 3-shot par 5. It is just asking you a very, very, very specific question. And I think what annoyed me a lot, and maybe this is like, I know golf is not supposed to be fair, but like this was me being a little bit of the fair police. I had a pretty decent drive. It was just kind of like over in the right rough, and I didn't have an option. Like I tried to, I, I decided to play it through to 14 fairway, and then had to hit it over the bank of trees, like that guarded 13 and 14. And and if I had gone left because of the tree situation, I would have probably had to hit like a, I don't know, 40-yard shot and then lay up again, and then it would have been a 4-shot hole. And so basically, I mean, I guess, some people would say that like it's good in the sense that if you want to be able to have an angle at all, you have to hug the left side of that fairway, but there's also water over there and it's 610 yards. It's just a hole where like there's too many factors, right? It's like I like chocolate chip and peanut butter cookies. But if you do chocolate chip and peanut butter and sprinkles and white chocolate and raspberry, suddenly it's like, yo, there's like too many ingredients in here, right? Like I like all these things in bits and pieces, but when it's super long and you must push along the left and you must like it's just again, I know not par fives are not all birdie holes and stuff, but it was just a hole that I hit a pretty decent drive in the right rough, and I was like, I don't know if I go in the next fairway. I don't know if I go left. I don't know if I try to punch it. And again, I'm being kind of like a bit of a baby, but like it's just it's probably one of the worst par fives I've ever played. Like it just is not.
So I'll be the devil advocate here. So I actually, it was one of my only it was my of the day.
You birdie this
and
hole?
yeah,
Oh wow.
I was on in three, or I was on in four. Yeah. So the reason
Well, if you're on in four, you didn't make birdie. What do you mean?
I'm sorry, I was on three. I birdied. I was right the first time.
I made birdie. I was
myself
on
in
in four. It's like, ooh.
I was on in three. I made four. Anyways, from my
What were your three shots?
loss.
Remind me, like, what you hit? Driver, three
So-
wood, three wood? Like, what'd you hit?
driver, 3-wood, 6-iron.
Six.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
But for me, what I'm trying to say is on hole, my tee box is 55 yards in front of yours. Like, legitimately, it's a 60-degree quarter than what yours is. Like,
Yeah,
so,
that's true.
and the angle of my tee box. So, you guys were like 30 yards left.
The angle
of
was
where tee box.
awful from where we were.
So my angle at the edge of the dogleg right is 240 carry, 260
That's true.
through the fairway. So for my distance, everything, I reached the corner of and had a perfect look into the green. From where your angle is, you guys to get to the corner had to legitimately 275, 280 carry rolling out to 300. In those conditions being soft that day, it really is an impossible shot.
Wasn't happening.
Like,
yeah.
Greg and JD are probably two of the longest hitters that I personally play with regularly. I mean, these guys average 280 to 290 carries, getting it out to 310. That's their stock driving. Like, these guys, they got beat to shit on this hole. And it just from where that tee box is, I think that's the big detriment. I don't think that tee box should.
It's a good point.
be in play.
It's distance and angle, because the angle promotes you to do what I did and hit it a little bit to the right. But again, if you're in the right rough, it's essentially a one-stroke penalty, which is a good way to put it. So, and yeah, it's also one of those things that candidly we talk a lot about, or not we, but like, modern golf talks a lot about the issues with lengthening courses, building tee boxes, having to walk back. Like, yeah, we literally parked the cart and walked 65 yards back to that tee, and it was like, let's just like, yeah, I just think it's one of those, like, if we just teed off from your tee box, the hole makes, because you could do it could be just as rewarding, where it's like if you're JD, if you really want to bite off a lot, you have to hit like a hammer cut, but from your angle, he could have hit a hammer cut around the tree. Like there's still a way to be really aggressive, but to your point, when it's requiring you to really have a good angle, you must hit a 300-yard drive. It's like, okay, like,
I'm
okay.
also gonna say this though, and this is something I'm gonna say. There's probably a reason that they didn't have tee markers on the tee boxes that you guys were playing that day. Just saying, if the golf course isn't setting up tee markers, there's probably a reason. One, the course is playing very soft, and you're not going to get any rollout. I really want people to just hate the course because of things like that. So maybe not
Yeah, that's
a tee
fair.
box that has no
The
markers.
course is like, wait, so you played the tee boxes that weren't set up, and you think the course is too long? Like, you're a fucking idiot.
Yes, I think 6,900 would have been plenty of for you guys for that day. I don't think it needed to
Really,
be put on.
at least for me, I should have. You know what it should have been? Greg and JD from the back, me one up, you two up, and we all probably would have had a little bit more fun.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
whatever. I'm bitching and moaning.
Yeah.
What about you, Big? Was 13 also your least favorite hole, or did you have another one that you didn't really love?
It wasn't necessary, and that's again, it's the teams that I played that I thought it was a little bit more of a playable hole for me. For me, I think the hole that I really, it wasn't that I disliked it, but it was just kind of a boring. I wouldn't say it's boring. It's just a very wacky design, and that's actually the last 13, number 14. 14 has this break in the fairway, but the break in the fairway is at 300 yards from the tee that I was playing. But it's got water on the left, massive amount of trees on the right-hand side with a cart path that weaves in between the trees. Then the cart path reappears crossing through the fairway during that break of the fairway. And then there's water on the right with 2 bunkers on the right to add to the water. And then there's a giant fall off left with a bunker left of the green. It's just kind of let's pump the brakes on trying to fucking be diabolical and cause issues for anybody here. For me, it was just an overdone situation. The pond on the right hand side, fill that with and get rid of it. I don't mind the actual bunkering, but you can't have 2 bunkers in between the green and a pond with no miss right and no miss left. It just forced every single one of us, all 4 of us, laid up to that hole and then hit in from there. There's no reason to try to attack it because you're just not gonna be able to. It's just kind of a weird design hole. Was not my favorite tonight. It just seemed like it was utilizing what they had.
Yeah, I think both of those holes were not great, exacerbated by the wrong tees. Or I guess, I mean, the tees are one thing. The other thing, too, that I will say, I would very much like to try to play Emerald Valley again when it's summertime and the ball's rolling. Because part of what it was, too, and it's not their fault, is literally your driver carry was your number. Balls were almost backstopping. So I think that, I think I'd love to come back up and play Emerald Valley one up when it's a little firmer. Still going to be a really hard test of golf. But yeah, I mean, like we kind of said, I think that I know we've kind of went on and on about kind of the trees and some of this stuff, but I think we're trying to give you guys a sense of what it is now, what it could become in the future. And I mean, to your point, Chris, with the Oregon connection, the Nike money, I could totally see. So at some
also,
point, just
they gotta be
being hey,
money.
Here's $5 million. Go fucking do whatever you want.
They also have to be making money renting this facility lab as well. They can't not be making money. It's legitimately a piece of the property.
Yeah, which also too, we're putting 2 and 2 together. It looks like that facility, when it was bought in the 80s, that was like a gym wellness area, which they put. It's a 4.5. I mean, this was in like the 70s. It was like a $4.5 million facility. So we're guessing that used to be sort of the health center area attached to Emerald Valley. But yes, that is now where Lab is making all of their putters. And as that kind of everybody knows, Lab is having a moment right now because I know I'm trying to get, well, I'll say that I'm getting a Lab putter. That's all that I'll say for now. But like, I know that Jack's been trying to help me, and like the note he got back is like they're basically saying it's going to take about 5 days to get an email response. That's how busy they are right now,
Yeah.
which is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, Lab's been saying as a fitter, it's probably been the largest inquiry about a singular club actually carry. I probably get more questions about them than any other brand right now. Just goes to them because they're not crazy advertising. They're not going out of their way to like pay tour pros. Tour pros are actually coming to them for their putters, which is always a positive look when you know you're Scotty Cameron and you're giving everybody free tour rat putters that of course they're not going to say no to a $5,000 free putter, but actually people are seeking you out to try your technology and your equipment. I think is kudos to them to be able to
Pretty crazy.
basically say F you to the modern or to what status quo has been. So, but yeah, I mean those type of things with Philip money and Lab Golf money, and I think Emerald's doing all right financially. I think there are some things that they could improve some money in and be able to make that a absolutely gem of the Pacific Northwest, because bones are there. They need the proper architect and a little bit of money to place that much better.
Yeah, and again, we encourage you to go play it. We're just trying to give you our honest thoughts around like if you're standing on the sixth hole, being like, is it just me or is this place feel tight? It's not just you. So yeah, Chris, great to catch up with you, buddy. Obviously, great to see you in person. I'm excited to see you in 6 weeks or so for the cookout.
Yep.
It's coming up, and yeah, I'll talk to you soon.
Yes, sir, buddy.
Peace.